We started streaming. Chair Rios, you may begin.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Historic Districts Review Board. Today we are April the 11th, 2023. Melissa, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Rios,
Here.
Vice Chair Guida,
Excused.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Here.
Member Berkeley,
Here.
Member Beachside,
Here.
Member Bienvenue,
Here.
Member Larson.
Excused.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda, Heather?
Yes, Chair Rios, there are a few changes. First, with reference to 418 Apodaca Hill, that case is going to be postponed to the next meeting on the 25th of April. And 1120 East Alameda Street, we've been in communication with the property owner so we can do a site visit next time. And so that will also be heard on April 25th.
Okay, thank you very much. Is that it?
That is it. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as just amended? Motion and a second, please.
Beachside so moves. Aguilar Medrano seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. We have minutes of March 28th, 2023. Any changes to these?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Attorney Rubelid.
With respect to page 9 of the minutes, in the board discussion, there is a motion which reads, Member Guida moved to approve the project as submitted and noted that the entire residency existing in the proposed addition will be El Rey cementitious stucco. That should read will be El Rey buckskin cementitious stucco.
Any other changes, anyone? If not, is there a motion and a second to approve? It's just amended. Do I hear a motion?
Bienvenue moves to approve as amended.
Aguilar Medrano seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Abstain.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. We have 9 findings of fact and conclusions of law. Changes to any of these?
Madam Chair.
Attorney Rubelid.
With respect to 57 Old Santa Fe Trail, this is the Lucchese sign. Member Bienvenue, did you see an email I sent you? Member Bienvenue asked for an amendment to that. And unfortunately, I neglected to review Member Bienvenue's a request for a modification to that, and I sent the unmodified findings of fact and conclusions of law for number 57 Old Santa Fe Trail, 2022-6437 HTRB. So I would ask that that be removed from this list of findings of fact and conclusions of law. We'll just have to set it over to April 25th. I don't have any objection to Member Bienvenue's modification, but this
Just
what's on the agenda is not the one that contains that modification.
Thank you. So if there are no changes, Member Beachside?
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes, Heather.
a question for Mr. Rubelid. Is there any way that we can possibly put that on the record tonight as to the change? So that they can be updated prior to signature?
I can describe the change, but change is not in the finding of fact and conclusion of law that's attached to the agenda.
Is it possible for Member Bienvenue to indicate what the change is, since it's attributed to him? Is it long?
Madam Chair, no, I just don't have it in front of me, and I know that Attorney Rubelid does because I sent it in an email, so he might be able to read it out loud. It's not long.
The recommendation was that language from the March 14th, 2023 staff report, which reads that staff does not find that the proposed sign is required to prevent a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare. With respect to all 3 exceptions, And that would be included in the background section. Is that correct?
I don't think that was all. I think it was a change to indicate that originally the findings indicated that staff had found all exception criteria to have been met. And I altered the language to be consistent with staff's report, which was that staff recommended that the exception criteria had not been met with respect to all exceptions for the exception standard of an injury to the public or to the applicant.
Well, Member Bienvenue, I have a copy of your email here.
Okay,
And would you like to see what I'm?
no, if you could just read it, what the revision wasn't, that's fine.
Okay. I did not specifically print your. But let me bring that.
Madam Chair, we.
It's a
can
red
just go
line
ahead and
version.
Continue. I just do know.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can postpone this, the findings and conclusions to the end of the meeting?
Oh, that would be great. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Do we need a motion? Yes, I'll entertain a motion in reference to that.
Bienvenue moves to postpone consideration of the findings and the fact and conclusions of law until the end of the meeting.
Beachside seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano.
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
member Beachside,
Yes.
member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Matters from the public. Anyone here wishing to speak on anything that you might be concerned about?
Stephanie Benenato. My continuing concern, and I think this will happen tonight again, is when you adopt these findings of facts and conclusions of law, that you are taking invalid action. The ordinance, both, I think it's 1.3 something, and also that resolution from 2015 clearly says, again, majority of the members present that form the quorum need to vote for something. That means when you only have 4 people there, 2 people cannot take action for 7-person board. There at least has to be a consensus of the voting members. This to me is a good policy decision. But at this point, I actually think that the city is acting is engaging in malfeasance, because you're going to approve all of these findings and every one of them will be subject to appeal, because there's only half of the 4 people voting, not a majority of the people, which would be 3. And so I am asking that you don't take action on any of those, and that you require a new vote on them so that you can at least get 3 people to vote for the action. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else in this room wishing to speak on anything that might concern you? No one? Heather?
Yes, Madam Chair, there is one person on Zoom who would like to speak. Richard Martinez, you can unmute.
Thank you. My name is Richard Martinez. I just wanted to mention on one of the last cases, you were not informed correctly, because on the Lucchese sign, there is another wall a sign on the plaza. That's the 5 and Dime, which I did in about 96, I think it was. And that sign is actually, I think, not within the regulations right now. And it is backlit, has lights inside of it, which is not allowed, but it was a replica of the Woolworth sign that existed before that. And that's why it was allowed. And I also want to mention that I won a historic renovation award for that project from this board back in 96. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next thing, which is staff communications. What do you have to tell us, Heather?
Madam Chair, with reference to, you can see an item on the agenda to the 2023 Santa Fe Heritage Preservation Awards. Nicole Thomas is going to be making the presentation. This represents a partnership with the Historic Santa Fe Foundation, the Old Santa Fe Association, and the city to recognize and identify those people who are doing great work to advance historic preservation in our community. So I will turn it over to Nicole.
And Heather, is the date for is the awards date still May the 18th, or were you able to change that?
Madam Chair, we were not able to change that because of scheduling, but what we have decided to do is also have an opportunity in front of the city council. So on May 10th, I've made a reservation to have a presentation of the historic preservation awards at the council, and we'll coordinate with the board to give out those awards as well. So it's a televised event. Obviously, the council meetings are, so it's a good opportunity to let our community know about these awardees.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, are you with us?
I am. Good evening, Chair Rios and board members. Is there a way, Heather, that I can show a PowerPoint?
Yes, just let me promote you.
Okay. I'm going to join as panelist. I'll be right back.
Great.
Okay, I'm back, and let me just share my screen here. Show the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so once again, it's awards season, almost award season. May is Preservation Month, and as mentioned by Heather, the City of Santa Fe participates along with the Historic Santa Fe Foundation and Old Santa Fe Foundation in celebrating Preservation Month by awarding some projects, awards for different categories. This year we have not very many nominees. We did look at some of the suggestions, or actually all of the suggestions that the board gave, but many projects are just not complete right now, and especially, surprisingly, a lot of the remodel projects. So the projects we're presenting were either found by staff or submitted by others. Okay, so the Santa Fe Heritage Preservation Awards is an annual celebration, as I mentioned, and the first award that we're going to look at, we have two examples of architectural, excuse me, let me start again. The Architectural Preservation Award is the first that we'll be looking at the nominees for. The Architectural Preservation Award is given for outstanding examples of maintenance, restoration, and rehabilitation of a designated historic property. Casa Barbara and the Old County Courthouse are the two nominees for this category. Okay. So that's 530 Garcia Street is the Casa Barbara Apartments, and 102 Grant Street is the Santa Fe County John Gaume historic building that was recently restored. So Casa Barbara, the board reviewed it for a status review in 2021. And it's a 12-unit apartment complex located at 530 Garcia Street. Its historic status is significant. The board designated it significant in 2021. And it's in the downtown and east side historic district. The apartments were built of 5 apartment blocks arranged in a U shape around a central courtyard. The board designated this complex as a significant building. The apartments were built between 1950 and 1953, and they were one of the first they were the first apartment complex in Santa Fe. The complex is an example of post-World War II design and was tied to a somewhat scandalous Federal Housing Authority Veterans Rental Housing Program that was investigated by the Senate in the 1960s. It's nominated for the Architectural Preservation Award because it's an excellent example of a well-maintained historic property. And it has some territorial revival details, such as pediments and other things, but the property is really in excellent condition, and has some unique features too, like the wing windows at the door. And almost everything is original, including the windows. The second in this category for architectural preservation is the Santa Fe County John Meme Historic Building, which was constructed in 1939 in the Spanish Pueblo Revival style. The building is owned by and was restored by the Santa Fe County and was formerly the county courthouse. Its historic status is designated as significant to the downtown and east side historic district. The building was originally designed by Meme and was partially funded by the Public Works Administration funds that were part of the New Deal. The original design included a courtyard on the north side of the building, which you can see is infilled here. It was infilled in the 1970s in order to create more interior space inside the building. But the restoration that was kind of kicked off in 2015 and ended in 2021 restored the courtyard. So it's a really beautiful restoration that was done on this property. Okay, and then Chair Rios, I don't know, do you want to vote after each category, or do you want to vote at the end?
At the end.
Okay, so those are the two for this first category. The second category is Compatible Remodel Award. The Compatible Remodel Award is given for outstanding examples of building remodels that harmonize with the historic structures in a historic district. This year, the nominations are the Westminster Presbyterian Church at 841 West Manhattan Avenue, which is a very modest remodel, but was done to accommodate kind of more modern needs, such as better air circulation in the church and ADA ramp. And the second one is a single-family residential structure at 553 Agua Fria Street, which was brought forward in 2021 for you all to review for an award, but it was not chosen. However, it's a really great restoration. So the Westminster Presbyterian Church was constructed in 1965 and has a historic status of contributing to the West Side Guadalupe Historic District. It's very well maintained and has a high degree of integrity. Pretty much on the north side is the only location where you see any significant remodel that has occurred. And so there are three primary elevations for this property. In 2018, they came forward and asked for to be able to replace the steel casement windows and to add an ADA ramp. This is the pre-ADA ramp photo. And as you know, many of our photos for what a property looked like are photocopies because we used to not have everything digital. So, and this is the current church. They've replaced all of the windows here on the south elevation, and then this window, and then the windows around on the east elevation. And then they added a modest little ramp here in the front. So this is a very small remodel, but done very nicely and in an effort to keep the church the same as it has been since 1965 to the degree possible. 553 Agua Fria Street. This is, I realize, a really rough picture, but this was one of the pictures that came forward in the application in 2020. And I'll go back to this after I show you the restored, rehabilitated, remodeled version. Okay, this building is contributing to the, it's a single family residence and it's contributing to the West Side Guadalupe Historic District. The building was originally constructed in 1908 and was remodeled, over its life as needed, as is very common in Santa Fe. At some point, steel sash windows, some point between 1930 and 1950, steel sash windows were installed, and the project worked to preserve those windows, and so the windows are retained. I know some board members did visit this property a couple of years ago. It was Dale Zinn was the architect, and Randy Lowenthal is the property owner. But very nice, sensitive rehabilitation of this property. Okay, and the next category is compatible new construction. Here's a little bit more of this house. The windows around the back were replaced, and so were the portal. But you can see the steel sash window in the middle photo is original to the property, to the house. Okay, compatible new construction is given for outstanding examples of new construction that harmonize with the historic structures in the historic district where the property is located. The nominees are 102 Catron Street and 463 Camino Don Miguel. I'm sorry, 100 Catron Street. That was a typo. Okay, so 100 Catron Street is the Santa Fe County building, which was at once, it was once Harvey Junior High until it was moved to off of Agua Fria. The building was built between 1937 and 1938, but was completely demolished to make way for the new courthouse, which was completed in about 2021. And so here's a picture of that. And this is a county project. So the board didn't make a decision to approve or deny, but they did come forward for review and comment to the board. 463 Camino Don Miguel is contributing. The main house of this property is contributing to the downtown and east side, but this structure that was the carport and deck, viewing deck, sunset viewing deck, was not contributing. And in 2021, the owners came forward to request removal of the carport and the roof deck in order to construct a territorial style casita that matched the style of the house. And the casita has an attached garage. The total structure is about 850 square feet, and it fits very well into this lot on Camino Don Miguel. Okay, and for the final award that the board will choose to vote yes or no on is the Cultural Preservation Award. And this is given in honor of preservation of Santa Fe's unique cultural heritage. And the nominee for this category, we had one, was Johnny Armijo and Johnny's Cash Store. And I will read what was written for the nomination. Santa Fe native Johnny Armijo recently passed on March 9th, 2023 at 93 years old. Johnny and his father built Johnny's Cash Store using adobe bricks they made themselves. The store opened to the public in 1946 when Johnny was 17 years old. Since then, Johnny has become a staple figure in the community. According to the recent article in the New Mexican, Johnny sponsored local youth sports teams, delivered Thanksgiving meals to neighbors, and donated to the Carmelite Monastery. As far as I know, this is the person that wrote this. This is the last local family-run grocery store in the East Side. The store's humble beginnings in architecture are representative of Santa Fe's culture, where community comes first. His lifelong dedication to keeping this part of our history alive is worthy of recognition. And as you know, Santa Fe did used to have many neighborhood stores, and I believe that this is the last one that exists. And then awards that the board will not vote on, but will also be part of the award ceremony are the Mayor's Award nomination, which will be put before the mayor to see if he would like to give Mr. Phil Beauvais an award for all of his contributions. The Archaeology Award, which was chosen by the ARC, is the Chenard House Archaeological Reconnaissance. And then Mr. Frank Katz will receive a service award. Any questions? Does the board want to see any other photos? Go back through the categories. How would you like to proceed for the vote?
Nicole, thank you. Thank you very much. You did an excellent job presenting these awards and telling us all about it.
Thank you.
Normally, what the board does is they hand out a ballot and we do it by secret vote. We normally do not. And I personally, for me, I would like to proceed in that way. Board members, do you have any?
Well, Chair
Mhm.
Rios, I believe, I believe that the last few years, per the city attorney's office, that the vote needs to occur by consensus under this item. And no longer is the secret ballot allowed. And I believe that that started in 2020.
Sorry to tell you, my dear, but
Am I wrong?
yeah, yes, you are. Seriously, this was brought up last year.
Uh-huh.
And that's okay. We were going to do it here publicly. And I believe member Guida brought it up that it had been done secretly in the past.
Yes.
And I don't know. I would like to hear from other board members. I don't know that it's a huge deal, but let me hear from board members. Member Bienvenue, what do you think?
Well, I think it's certainly easier for the board members to do it privately, I think, given that
If you,
I'm sure everyone agrees that they're all extremely worthy of the award, just to avoid potentially hard feelings if it could be done by secret ballot. And that's traditionally how it has been done. I would be happy to continue that way unless it's legally mandated otherwise.
Member Beach.
Yeah, I think I recall when we were doing the Zoom meetings exclusively that we would send an email after the meeting with our choices. That might be another option.
Member Aguilar Medrano, what is your opinion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm the newest one here, so I haven't participated in a vote before. But I would be in favor, I think, of just emailing our selections immediately after the meeting. And maybe if we could also be emailed this presentation just to flip through it one final time. Maybe we could have a cutoff date depending on what time we get out this evening.
Suggestion, Member Berkeley.
Yes, I would agree with what everyone has said, and I like the idea of receiving the presentation via email so we can review again and vote privately. Thank you.
All right. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
So we'll be happy to send out an email to get your feedback and also include that presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. And then I will conclude here with my last slide, which is to let everybody know where the that the Santa Fe Heritage Preservation Awards will be at 5:30, May 18th, 2023 at the San Miguel Chapel. And then the reception will be held immediately following at LZAG 1. So we're looking forward to everyone's participation.
Thank you again, thank you, Nicole. And I believe Member Bienvenue, you're going to be out of town? And Member Aguilar Medrano. Oh, sorry that you guys won't be there, but you can do all the presentations at the council. Okay. We'll move on to the next item, and that is old business. We have nothing under old business. We'll move on to new business, and now we have 3 cases left under new business, and the first one is located at 1170 Camino Dolores. This is Heather's case. May we hear the case, Heather? And is the applicant here? The applicant.
Yes, he is. Thank you, Chair Rios. And I've started my PowerPoint. So case number 2023-6401 is located at 1170 Camino Dolores, which is located in the downtown and east side historic district. And can you please show the PowerPoint? Just one moment. IT, can you please bring up the PowerPoint? Looks like this was my fault. My apologies. Just a second. It's the user. Okay. Many things to think about. There we go. My apologies. All right. So 1170 Camino Dolores located near the intersection of Camino Cabra and Camino Dolores. You can tell here it's highlighted with the yellow highlight and the arrow. So the site, we did a site visit today, and the site is mildly visible, and I have additional photo, mostly just roof lines from Camino Cabra near the intersection of Camino San Acacio. That was one of the concerns the board expressed last time, was the visibility of the proposed addition. This is the view of the property from Camino Dolores. This property was designated as non-contributing by the board previously in a status review. And the west elevation of the property, this property actually represents several buildings, but the building that we're looking at tonight is the main residence. This portal is located on the north elevation, and the applicant is proposing to infill the portal and also add an additional portal. So that it's not an infill, but he would actually be taking the portal down. So it is technically an addition to the house with a portal on that addition. This is the floor plan that was presented to you on the left-hand side as the existing floor plan. And then in response to the comments by the board, you can see on the right-hand side the updated floor plan and site plan. There are two other buildings on the property, a studio as well as a casita. The proposed addition where the portal posts are will be located approximately 44 feet to the rear yard. And there is an intervening pool structure as well. The applicant has redesigned, and this is a more detailed view of that. So the applicant has redesigned the addition to have less plate glass. That was a concern of the board, and actually enclose it a little bit more and comply with those standards on the east elevation and the west elevation as well. You can see that the walls have been added. There's no plate glass there. There's a setback by 3 feet for any openings. Underneath the portal, which is permitted, there are larger windows. And so the design standards state that larger window sizes are permitted underneath the portal. These windows are not proposed to be divided. And so that was one of the reasons that we spent some extra time on determining the public visibility, because that is referenced in the design standards as well. The view from the south elevation, which is not a primary facade, but is showing the addition beyond. Clear story windows are proposed for the addition, but will be hidden by the parapet of the existing building. And then the east elevation, which are the two drawings on the bottom of the drawing, on the bottom of the slide, illustrates that the addition, but also the inclusion of a window that meets design standards with no more than 30 inches on the diagonal for the panes of glass. Additionally, there is a portal that is proposed on that elevation with a door beneath. So similar to what's there now, but this will be a replacement. The north elevation, one that would be facing towards San Nicasio, but there are intervening buildings. You can see the elevation of the addition. And once again, there's that replacement portal on the left of the drawing for that entranceway. And then there will be both windows, sliding glass doors, as well as a regular pedestrian door on that elevation undivided. But it is beneath what it is qualified as a portal. A large discussion that we had last time was about, what consists of a portal, and this is 4 feet deep. And the elevation drawing also illustrates the shed roof nature of the portal, which you can see on the section elevation that is at the bottom of the slide. The applicant did provide a section drawing to illustrate the relationship of this particular building to Camino Cabra. And you can see that there's approximately 28 feet of fall from the wall, or I guess I'll let the applicant provide additional detail, but there's a large amount of fall from where the building would be located to Camino San Nicasio. And the intervening building that you see there is on the photographs here. So the applicant also did provide this photograph. And so we're standing right at the edge of the driveway that is at Camino San Nicasio. And so this is the casita that is located somewhat, you can just see some lines behind this tree, and then where the proposed portal will be, as well as the addition, the combination thereof you would only see roof lines as it is today. And I've provided this is a street view that shows the visibility actually from Camino Cabra. And once again, you can only see roof lines at this location as well. Staff finds that the proposed design meets the downtown and east side historic district design standards and recommends approval with the proposed changes. That concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you very much, Heather. Any clarification questions, board members, for Heather? None. As Mr. Sears makes his way to the podium, I need to tell everybody that if you disagree with the decision that this board renders this evening, you do have the option to appeal to the city council, and that can be done. You'll have 15 days after the findings and conclusions have been adopted and approved. And also, Melissa, will you help me? 2-minute limit for public comment. And Mr. Sears, you now have the floor. Thank you.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jeff Sears, 122 Lorenzo Road. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the members that weren't here last time, is there any, Well, also I'm here, well, on Zoom is the owner, David Lake, is available also to answer any questions this evening. But if for the members that weren't here last time, is there any questions or comparison to what we had before? If not, we agree with staff report and stand for any new questions.
Chair Rios, Mr. Lake has risen, he has raised his hand. Mr. Lake, you can unmute.
Hi there, it's David Lake. I really appreciate what
Excuse me,
everyone
sir?
does.
I need
Excuse
to
me?
go ahead and swear. I need to go ahead and swear you in.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
David Lake, 1170 Camino Dolores.
Yes, sir. You now have the floor and you can go ahead with your comments.
Well, I appreciate everything the board does. I think it's a very difficult position to review these things as an architect. This view from Camino Cabra that you have up on the screen, what you're seeing in reality above the people standing in the street is not the main house beyond. It is actually the back of the wall of the pool. So you can't see the portal at all from this viewpoint. It's a little challenging because of there's so much fall. But for clarity's sake, I just wanted to say that I've worked with Jeff and Heather. I very much appreciate Heather reaching out to us and us trying to adhere to the maxims of the Design Review Board. This little section sketch I did shows the complexity of how much fall within my site. It falls 7 feet. Beyond the wall of my site, it drops another 22 to 28 feet all the way to Camino Cabra and San Nicasio. So I guess the point is that what you're seeing from the street view is really the back of the pool wall and not where the proposed addition would be. And this section is showing that the view shed from Camino Cabra would not see the proposed addition, and at least that's the plan. We have worked, and I very much appreciate Jeff in his effort on my behalf to meet the east and west criteria for this district. And in addition, we did set the glass back from the face of the proposed portal columns. I believe it's almost 5 feet. Jeff, you can confirm that, but it's more than 4 feet. And our desire was to enhance the views from this existing terrace and to create a living kitchen that the house really doesn't have. It's the existing house is only internal square footage is only 1,700 feet, so it's quite a small house, and we would very much appreciate the board's approval. Thank you
very much for your comments. Board members, do you have any questions in reference to this project, either for the owner or the applicant or the architect? Member Aguilar Medrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hey, Jeff. Heather, can we go to the east elevation, please? I think this is just going to be a quick clarification. Yeah, so I see here from the face of the building to the portal columns, we now have 4 foot 8 inches of depth, and that the column sitting on top of the stone wall. So that all makes sense. In the elevation, you're also showing a 30-inch overhang in addition to that, past the posts. But I just didn't see that overhang on the plan. In the plan view, it looks like the portal ends where the posts are at the stone wall. So I think, is that just a little plan adjustment that needs to happen?
Yeah, that should be a dotted line, 30-inch beyond that.
Okay. I don't have issue with either. I just, maybe we can make that into a motion that's just a noted difference between the two. quick question, and you may have spoken to this last time, but I didn't see in the package. Can you give us a quick description on the color of the windows and the stucco being proposed?
Yes, the stucco matches the existing, and that's the L-ray. I have it here. It's the L-ray number 125, La Luz. And the windows are proposed. The windows under the north elevation are, the system is dynamic fenestration and the color is obsidian. We looked at that last time. I don't know if you recall, would member Bienvenu asked that question. It's a dark gray. The wood beams and vigas will be same as what is on the building now. We're going to reuse those viga posts and viga beams for the small portal at the new entrance that's on that northeast corner there. That's set back again. That's create a portal completely around that new entrance, 4 foot deep there.
Okay.
So it's a dark gray color.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and I appreciate the 3 foot setback from the corner. And I also see that you guys changed one of the windows to a divided light that's not under the portal. So that is all appreciated. I guess my one last concern that I would have would be, the code allows windows under the portal to be larger panes of glass, but it doesn't say doors. So we have some floor to ceiling doors here under the portal that are being proposed in addition to a traditional swing door. So that would be my only lasting hesitation, that I'd just be curious to see what other board members think. We did approve a project fairly recently that was a very similar condition. It was under a portal, had some sliding glass doors. I don't believe it was publicly visible. It was in the back of the house, but that one was divided light that we approved. So I've yet to see a floor to ceiling sliding glass door under a portal that we've approved. So just love to hear additional thoughts on that. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And is that just one door? Member Aguilar Madron.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking Jeff. No, I think it's one sliding door and then 2 just single hinge doors, but Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, reading that wrong.
There's just one single hinge door there and then 2 pairs of sliders.
And there's another single hinge on the left-hand side of this elevation, right? For a total of 2.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that would be the second one under the entry portal.
Okay, yeah. So I think, yeah, 2 hinged, 1 sliding. That's what we're looking at.
What does the ordinance tell us in reference to the doors under portals?
Chair
Lots of
Rios,
glass.
in the past, windows and doors have both been permitted to be undivided light. If you think about doors on the plaza, there are a lot of them that are not divided light. Although, in terms of a residential application, I would have to do research.
I know that for commercial buildings, they are definitely allowed, but I just wanted a clarification in reference to residential, since the question was asked.
Yes, the doors are permitted. I would like to take a look at the code language, and I can't do that right now. But can I get back with you?
Absolutely.
Just to give me
yeah.
a moment and let.
Mhm. And we that were on the field trip today, as has been indicated by Heather and the owner and Jeff, it's the visibility of this project is minimal, very minimal. Member Bienvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, but I'd just like to express appreciation for the work that you did to conform to the ordinance. I know that the last go around, there were a lot of issues, and I thought there was a high potential that there would be a request for exceptions. And I just really want to commend you and the owner for really bringing this project within the boundaries of the ordinance. And I think it's nicely done. The other thing I would point out that I don't think was mentioned, There was also a shed roof for the addition previously that's now been changed to a flat roof. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
So that's yet another effort to conform to our ordinance. So I would say well done. As far as the doors go, I don't have any concern about them. I think it would be anomalous to, and really aesthetically inappropriate to have those be divided lights given this, the windows. However, I would want to be certain that there is code support for that view, because we wouldn't want to inadvertently set a precedent for that to take place in other instances where it would not be as appropriate.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Member Beachside.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up question on the colors for the windows that are proposed. I believe the existing house has a sort of green-blue color framing around the windows. Are you proposing in the end to have two colors on this building? The obsidian and the blue-green?
I'd ask David Lake to answer that question, please.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The idea was on the small portal to the left, if you're looking at the north elevation proposed, we were going to paint those, the door and the windows, the green to match the existing house. And it was really only on the north elevation under the portal that we were proposing the dark brown gray, which was really trying to keep in character with the color of the existing portal columns and beams. I just thought that would be cleaner looking, and it also just happens to be a color that's available through this manufacturer of special sliding doors that allow us to do. I mean, our preference is that that's actually that the room actually serves as a portal, that the doors slide open. We have big sliding screens that then close over it so that the room feels like a portal. So the idea was to try to get this to be a little bit different, facing north under the portal only. So we don't have a problem. If I have to make the windows that face east and west, which are the punched windows, if you feel that is stronger in terms of just meeting code and not setting any precedents, I'm fine with that. But the manufacturer, it'd be harder for me to make the north-facing glass frames be the that beautiful Santa Fe green, blue-green color.
Yeah, thank you. I understand your logic there. Can you tell us what the shed roof material is, or the color of that is?
Well, it's probably rendered incorrectly because it's actually it's just the same roll roofing that the whole house has, and it's this elevation is probably not as accurate as it should be in terms of it looks like you're going to see a lot of roof. The reality is it's just the same. It's matching all the roof of the house.
Oh, sorry. Is that not a shed roof? Am I reading that wrong? Over the portal?
It is a gently sloping. It's flat roof. It's really it's between a shed roof and a flat roof. It's just to get water off of that new addition.
Oh, I see. Thank you. Okay.
And of course, all roofs in Santa Fe are never completely flat. They have pitch to canales.
Got it. Okay.
This is equivalent of that, an inch and a half on 12.
Thank you. And then just one last question about the colors under the portal. Is that stucco area? Is that also the La Luz color? Yeah.
Yes.
And sorry, one last question. The height of the doors under the portal, are those around 9 feet? Is that right? And is there any stucco around them, or is it just filling the
they're actually 9 foot 9 inches, and they're meeting a wooden beam that is structural. It's back in the same plane as the beam shown here at the portal. So it's kind of a redundant structural system. There's a portal that rests on the existing stone terrace wall, and then back in plane of the windows is another beam. So there's no stucco over the top because it's just wood beam.
Okay, and then, sorry, on the east elevation, could you tell us the dimensions of the new large divided light window? Is that around 9 feet as well?
Yes.
Yeah, and maybe you can just speak to the dimensions here that to me in the elevation, it looks so much taller than the adjacent door. I just wonder how how you look at that in terms of design. Is that does that work in terms
Can
of
we
design?
go to do you mind going to the east elevation?
East
Yeah.
elevation. East elevation.
So it's you know, Jeff knows this. I'm not as good a draftsman as my employees. The window is supposed to have a 30-inch sill to the window, so it may be a little larger than what's drawn here. But the idea is the head of the window would be roughly around 9'6" to match the head of the doors. And the reality is there is the portal that's coming off the existing house, proposed portal to the left of that big window. All those elements are scaled underneath the portal. So there are some big windows in the house, and this east facing window is looking towards the mountains, and there's a very large, huge Arizona cypress that I'm keen on preserving and protecting while we build this. That, I mean, if I was to draw the scale of the trees around this, you would see that the window is not as out of scale as it appears in this elevation. I just chose not to show the cypress trees and the so
Okay.
forth. So
Yeah, yeah, and then the color of that window again will be the green.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments, board members? And Heather, do you have a clarification for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rios, and thanks to Mr. Rubelet for helping me. But with reference to the combined door and window area, not exceeding 40%, and the beginning of the sentence references doors as well, in that refers, section, plus practice in the past. We know that practice isn't always correct, but in this case, it is supported by code. So both doors and windows can be undivided. Underneath portal. Yes.
Member Aguilar Madrano.
Just quick questions that I know for future as well. I think the part in the code that I was referring to wasn't the portion that talks about the percentage of glazing to stucco. Because the sentence reads at the end, except that buildings with portals may have larger plate glass areas for windows under portals only. So it doesn't say windows and doors. That's the part that I was unclear of.
So with reference to maybe it's a poorly written sentence, but under portals only, I think the only refers to portals. So the larger plate glass areas, and one of the things to think about is that this is plate glass as well. So I'm not explaining myself very well. Right.
Well, something that, we find in the code is that there are undefined terms. Plate glass isn't defined. So if you could show me, I'm not quite sure which door we're looking at, but, are we saying that that there are windows and there's a door there?
Slider.
If you're looking at the north elevation proposed, the far left glass on the corner, which would be the northeast corner underneath the portal, that is effectively a window. That's a fixed glass window. And to the right of that is a sliding slider that slides behind that window, which allows me to have sliding screen to slide over that opening so I can open the portal to breezes. And then to the right of that is a hinged, classic, just simple hinged door that would also have a hinged screen door, just like the house does today. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I think the clear distance between the, well, yeah, I think that's, I hope that answers your question.
Member Benvenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this may complicate things further, but my view of the way the ordinance is set up, this issue hinges on whether we consider this to be recent Santa Fe style or old Santa Fe style, which is, of course, a whole nother can of worms. It's difficult to disentangle, just to make a mixed metaphor there. Because the code says if it's recent Santa Fe style, then the issue is whether it's publicly visible, right? Because this issue of the divided lights only comes into play with publicly visible facades, which we've already determined this isn't. So if it's recent Santa Fe style, we don't have to worry about the distinction between windows and doors, in my view. If it's old Santa Fe style, then we don't even get to the issue of portals because it specifically says they all need to be divided lights on all facades, regardless of whether they're under portal or not. So I think that if we just decide whether this is old Santa Fe style or recent Santa Fe style, which I agree in advance is not easy to do, that resolves the question.
Well, if you don't mind, I think one of the surprises, and with Jeff's help, we had a historian and we were showing this to staff, and we were requesting if it was still under the aegis of a non-contributing. What's I think important to you as board members is that the existing portal that we've been looking at was very much changed and was in all likelihood, because we've had a hard time tracking all the history down, but the portal and the bathroom are a 1982 addition to a 1960 addition, which was an addition to the 1944 original two-room house that was on the site that's buried well within, I mean, you just don't see the 1940 house. This view from the north looking towards the white stucco and the portal, the house was extended in 82, and they added the window, the green window on the left, to the left of the Arizona cypress. That big window with the large mullions is a 1982 window, as or are the windows and doors from the portal, which is the white wall, into the original 1940 house. To the far right, where there's two French doors there, the two French doors that have the green trim at the far right, those were from 2012, which was an approved addition renovation by the prior owner, as is the plate glass above the projecting stucco bay to the left of those French doors. And that's a large piece of glass that brings light into a new bathroom that was part of the 1982 addition. So it's a melange of styles at best. And actually the windows to the left of the cypress are kind of an interesting 80s horizontally fenestrated window wall system that's very different from the double hung windows. They're actually casement, and then the double hung windows are double hung, and then to the left of that in the 80s was another different window. So it's it's part of the beauty of eccentricity of Santa Fe being built over time.
Thank you.
I think that I think that also on the south elevation, the large horizontal window there is more indicative of recent Santa Fe style on that south elevation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I mean, with a slight slightly different view because it's not just so, we're not really talking about status here where all of these additions are relevant. It's really what style is the entire house. But I agree with you. I think the fact that first of all, most of the house doesn't date back to what would be truly considered true old Santa Fe style. It really dates back to the era when there was revival styles, and it was an effort to harmonize with the old Santa Fe styles with similarity of materials and design. And then that was definitely continued over time through the additions and the remodeling, and especially with the specific area of the house that we're looking at here. So I think it's actually pretty clear that this would be categorized as recent Santa Fe style, and that in that case, the issue of the divided lights does not really come into play here because this is a non-publicly visible facade, in my view.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to ask for public comment at this time. Anyone from the public wishing to come forward, please lie down and get sworn in.
You swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
John Eddy, zip code 87506. Enough for you. Would you like some more? Darn. Number 14, Avenida Campo Verde. Madam Chair, board members, I do think very strongly that this house should be considered recent Santa Fe style. I don't think it has any extent integrity, which would place it as older Santa Fe style. So I appreciate the careful deliberation, but I think this makes it a pretty slam dunk decision on the windows. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Stephanie Benenato, PO Box 1601, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I do again have to say that I don't know the exact percentage, but the building that's added on to from the 40s and added on in the 60s, those are historic parts of the building. To me, recent Santa Fe style is more of what are the materials being used? Was it adobe or was it frame stucco and block? Because that would be using different materials to create the look of the older style, which to me is what recent Santa Fe style really means. It doesn't mean hard lines and big windows necessarily. It just means different materials to achieve the same effect. So I again just raise that as a question, not necessarily that it should prevent you from finding this to be more recent. However, I am really bothered by the entire glass on the north side. I just think it's totally inappropriate to Santa Fe new or old style. There should be some massing on that wall. And given that only one part, one part can only slide open, it's not exactly like the whole thing is going to be open, which again, I think was expressed here. And the portal itself is, I think, incredibly characteristic of Santa Fe style. And it's really, it looks so different with all the glass and no mass. And I have a feeling you're going to improve this because at least it's not right there on the edge, it's set back and it's not visible. But again, I don't find it at all compatible to what is called Santa Fe style, old or new. And I just wish that 9 foot, 9.5 foot, 9 3/4 feet glass windows on north sides is not only incompatible, but also energy inefficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, board members, you don't have anything further, and Mr. Sears, you don't have anything further, but Heather does.
Rios, with reference to the research that we've been conducting, The key is, thank you, Member Bienvenue, is really that it's recent Santa Fe style. And that's how staff would interpret it as well. And then the other key in that paragraph is that it's publicly visible. And so it was determined out in the field that it's not publicly visible. And so, and then the applicant has provided some additional information. I appreciate the information that Mr. Lake provided to clarify, you know, the eras of construction as well. So because of that, staff determines it to be recent Santa Fe style. And then that additional criterion of whether it's publicly visible or not does kick in. And then the doors and windows underneath the portal criterion does not apply if it's not publicly visible.
Thank you for that clarification, Heather, that explanation. And if I will entertain a motion at this time. Board members, we've been talking about this for over an hour or so, or about an hour. I think you're ready to make a motion. Member Benvenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In case number 2023-006401 HDRB at 1170 Camino Dolores, I move to adopt staff's recommendations and to approve the project as submitted on the condition that revised plans be submitted for staff approval, indicating the amount of overhang of the portal.
Is there a second to this motion?
Beach, I will second, and I would like to offer a friendly amendment that to specify in the motion that this is considered recent Santa Fe style, and that the colors of the new windows will match the existing except for under the portal, where it will be the obsidian color that mentioned by the applicant, and that the stucco will be La Luz matching the existing.
It's accepted as friendly.
Anything further to add? If not, can we have a roll call vote? Please?
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you, applicant.
Thank you so much. Everyone take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to the next case, which is located at 1249 Cerro Gordo Road, and this is Ramon's case.
There we go. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is a status review case for 1249 Sierra Gordo Road. It's in downtown Eastside District and the status is now non-contributing. The house was purchased recently and they would like to review the status to see what their options are for future proposed work. So the house is actually not on Sierra Gordo Road. It's on a private road that sits a house to the north of Sierra Gordo, and its public visibility is very minimal from the Sierra Gordo right away. What I'd like to do is just take you kind of around the building. It was built in the original core that you see indicated in this floor plan was built probably in the 40s. And then additional wings and utility and apartment room and a garage were added over the course of the next 20 years into the 60s. And then finally, in the 70s, what's identified as a sewing room, which is kind of a handcrafted addition, was put on. So this is approaching from Sierra Gordo Road. It's not actually it's not exactly on the right of way. So you can see that the house that's indicated on the site plan is not visible from this. So even less of this is visible from Sierra Gordo. This is the planter wall that was added sometime in the 70s, and in the background, you can see that bump out is the sewing room. And in the core, you can kind of make out the outline where the patio, where the portico is. Those arch windows were probably added in under the portal when the sewing room was added in the 70s. That's the sewing room, kind of funky. I think John Murphy called it hippie style. Now we're going around to the east elevation. This is another entrance to what's considered the core house, and then the two garages. This is what they're calling the apartment and utility room, which was undetermined exactly when it was added. It was probably at one point a shed. And you can see it's not in great shape. None of the windows appear to be original. This is the west elevation that faces more towards town. Again, all replaced windows. And the staff recommends that the historic status of the structure be maintained as non-contributing per 14-5.2C designation of significant and contributing structure.
Thank you, Ramon. So you feel that there have been so many changes to this house that the existing footprint of the house has been, or has the footprint of the house been altered, the original footprint?
Yes, there's been so many appendages added on over the accretion of time that there's really no historical significance to it anymore. So that's why I'm recommending that it maintain its status as non-contributing.
Any other questions or comments for Ramon at this time? Will the applicant or applicants please come forward and get sworn in?
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ernie Romero, 11 Caminito Santera, Santa Fe, New Mexico. So.
Mr.
Thank you.
Romero, do you agree with staff's recommendation that this house should remain, should be non-contributing?
Agreed. We're waiting to see what we could do on this house, prior to, before we get the status, whatever status you guys approve. But, it is an old house. There's a lot of aluminum windows. There's some of the main windows on the house are just, 2x material where they just set it in there. And I'm sure you guys saw that. I think it's not real visible from the street. I mean, what you see from the street looks really nice till you get up to it. And then, it's really gone down, but it wasn't maintained very good.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Any questions for the applicant? Anyone from the public wishing to speak in reference to this project? Stephanie Beninato is coming forward and she's already been sworn in.
Stephanie Beninato. Again, I just need to say again that even though the house has been added onto, it was from the 40s, and then the additions, the main additions were in the 60s. And the sewing room was sometime in the 1970s, date unstated. But if it was before 1973, then it's historic. And so again, dismissing it as somehow that it's not all from the 1940s does not make it less than 50 years old. If it's 1973 and earlier, then it is historic. And to me, I know it's not very visible, but I think the sewing room is the most authentic part of the building. It's very vernacular. And it does represent that late 60s, early 70s sort of yeah, kind of hippie-esque architecture, again, done by the owner builder, no doubt. If I was going to have a significant or primary facade, that would be actually the one that I think the board should choose. I have a feeling you will continue its status as non-contributing.
Thank you, Stephanie. And John Eddie is coming forward and he's already been sworn in as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Eddie again. I agree with the previous speaker wholeheartedly. I think the south elevation is the only part of this house that has any integrity. And I use that word carefully because it has vernacular integrity. I think the apertures of the windows, the arch windows and such, and the portal do provide the only integrity on this property. One of the individuals that impacted this house, Hal Miguel, was a vernacular counterculture figure in those years. And this house retains the character that he deliberately put into it, whether we like it or not. So I do agree that that facade should have some status different from the rest of the house. And I also understand that it's not very highly visible, but there we are. There's the deliberation that you have before you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Eddie. Anyone else in this audience wishing to comment on this project? Anyone on Zoom?
Chair Rios, no.
Board members, I'll turn it back to you. Any further comments or questions? Member Aguilar Medrano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I meant to bring this up prior to the presentation, but I forgot. But one thing that came up during our site visit was the issue of where the sign was visible, that it wasn't visible from a public street. So I'm just wondering, I know staff was going to talk about this after the fact. I'm just wondering where we stand with that, and if potentially we need to repost that sign, which would mean a postponement of the case, just to make sure we have that end covered.
Yes, I'm going to let Frank take that question, but I'd like to clarify that the Higbee that was recently done just less than a month ago puts the age of that Torreon kind of sewing room built in the mid-70s. It wasn't an exact date. It's just it's got mid-70s on it. Frank?
Thank you, Member Aguilar Medrano, Chair Rios. I looked up when Ramon brought this to my attention. I looked up a section of the code which is 14-3.1, subsection H, controlling notice requirements. 1, the posting requirements for all ENN meetings and public hearings required before a land use board accept appeals. The property shall be posted by the applicant.
Excuse me, Frank, for interrupting. Some members in the back of the room are saying they cannot hear.
Oh, okay.
Could you
All right.
speak to that mic?
Okay, so I'm looking at section 14-3.1, subsection H, notice requirements, subsection 1C, little Roman numeral 1, for all ENN meetings and public hearings required before a land use board accept appeals. The property shall be posted by the applicant with posters obtained from the land use director at the applicant's expense. At least one poster shall be prominently displayed, visible from each public and private street and road abutting the property, and securely placed on the property at least 15 calendar days up to the scheduled meeting. So I think the key words here are visible from each public and private street and road abutting the property. I looked at the Google map for this property, and I see it actually does not abut Cerro Gordo Road, even though it has an address on Cerro Gordo Road, and there's no definition of abutting. And this requires at least one poster, so there's been one poster posted. And I think that meets the requirements of the code. I don't think there's anything that indicates it has to be on Cerro Gordo Road. if Cerro Gordo Road actually does not abut the property line on this is actually off Cerro Gordo Road. And also, this matter was correctly posted in the agenda, which was posted on the city's website as of Friday. And then also there was a notice in the newspaper. I didn't get the date that that notice went in the newspaper, but presumably that complied with the public posting requirement as well. So I think there's been ample notice about this.
Okay,
meets the
thanks
code.
for looking into that, Frank. I defer to you on that and the interpretation of the code. So I think if you think it's fine, then
I
we
think
can
we're
move
okay.
forward. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there is nothing further to discuss, I will entertain a motion, please.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, Beachside. I wanted to say I appreciate that recent HICP was performed on this property. I think that's more research than we can do in a course of looking at the property and visiting it. And I respect the opinion of the evaluator. I appreciate that the family added on to this property over time and the vernacular tradition, but the assessment by the HICP is that it's not a good example of vernacular tradition. It's not vernacular or artistic. It's simply some rough additions to an older building. And so based on that, I would recommend that we maintain the non-contributing status of this property along with the walls and planters at the same status.
So second to this motion.
Berkeley seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
So the property is non-contributing. We will move on to the next case, which is located at 117 V Hill Lane. This is Heather's case. Thank you, Ramon.
Madam Chair, I'm going to recuse from this case.
Okay, let the record show that Member Benvenue is recusing himself from this case, and he is stepping away. He's stepping out of the building, and we'll call you back.
Thank you, Chair. As the chair stated, this property is located at 117 Vihal Lane, which is in the downtown and east side historic district. You can see outlined the lot, which is located at the northeast corner of V Hill and Camino Santander intersection. This is a picture of the elevation that faces V Hill Lane. And the primary entrance is off of this, off of V Hill Lane rather than Camino Santander. That's the reason it is addressed on V Hill Lane, as well as you see the elevation peeking over the wall of the south elevation facing Camino Santander. So these are the street views of the property. Additionally, there is a view on the east elevation. There's a great change between the subject property and the budding property owner or property to the west, to the east. And there is an access drive to that abutting property and a yard wall. So at this point, the second story of the subject property is publicly visible on that side, not necessarily the first story. This is a site plan that illustrates both the existing and the proposed conditions. You can see that the applicant is proposing additions on the east elevation, the south elevation, and the west elevation of the subject property. Just one moment. Yes, east and west elevations of the subject property. There is also window replacement that's being proposed. The existing floor plan is illustrated here, showing the portal on the south elevation and as well as the primary entrance portal, which is on the west elevation illustrated at the center of the picture. Furthermore, there is an existing guest house that was approved in the mid 2000s and constructed at that time in the upper right-hand portion of the illustration. So with reference to the proposal before us this evening, the applicant is proposing to enclose a portion of that entry portal on the west elevation, as well as the addition of an additional portal. So it would line up with the existing pedestrian gate. And so the pedestrian gate would still be functional and would remain as it is, but the portal itself would extend out to the wall, that line of the wall immediately adjacent to the gate. Furthermore, there is a pantry. An extension of the pantry is proposed, which is on the east elevation. The yard wall that I was just discussing, the driveway, is located just beyond the site plan illustration. So this would be the yard wall. And this is tucked under that area on the first floor. It would not be visible. And also the applicant is proposing a sitting room. This is a partial enclosure of a portal. That sitting room would provide passage between the guest house and the existing main house. The existing French doors and portal that are on the west elevation of the guest house will remain. The passageway will access the guest house via a door that will be in that enclosed area. So the impact to the guest house would be minimal. The applicant is also proposing the infill and addition windows on that second story. And where the arrows are indicated, those show the infill of the windows. And then also where I have a circle, I have illustrated with a circle, there are 3 sets of windows that are being proposed on that north elevation. And this is an illustration of the north elevation. So right now it is a blank wall. The applicant is proposing 3 sets of windows. I spoke with the applicant today, and there is a required 3-foot setback from the corner of the facade. And you can see that is not in the circled window on that elevation. And the applicant is willing to comply with a condition of approval that that window be removed to be 36 inches from the corner of the building. Here you can also see the addition of at the entryway that's highlighted in the dark color, as well as the portal. The existing gate will remain as it is in its location. Just one moment, having technical issues. Finally, this is an illustration of the pantry as well on the east elevation. And you can see that there will be a door as well as 2 other doors. That represents the passageway. This area represents the passageway, that partial enclosure of the portal, and this blank facade represents the guest house as well. And then an illustration of the south elevation showing that passageway, the partial enclosure, and the existing guest house viewed from the street will remain the same, as well as the rest of that elevation. And the west facade, you can see that the proposal also includes a replacement of the garage doors. And the illustration of the portal, the door that will replace the existing door, will be of a territorial revival style, similar to the style of the existing residence. These are views including the yard wall. So the view from the street, the applicant is not proposing to make any changes to the yard wall heights. And once again, a view from Camino Santander and illustrating the existing yard walls, but no changes to those heights. And finally, these are pictures of the different elevations. So the north elevation, where the 3 sets of windows are proposed, above the existing windows are here. And there's no change to the garage. The west elevation where that portal entry, expansion of the entry and the portal addition. This is the existing condition that you can see. The existing garage door is a flat panel garage door. And this is the existing portal on the south of the house. This is the south elevation, including and it wasn't a portal, but an overhang, the guest house with the overhang, the portal in the south elevation. And in this corner is where the applicant is proposing to enclose, and a view of where the pantry addition will be as well. Staff finds that all standards for the downtown East Side Historic District have been met and recommends approval.
Thank you, Heather. So the guest house is going to be attached to the main house via a passageway. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Any other clarification questions at this time? Member Beachside?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Heather, in our packet, there are copies of previous requests for hearings for the same property. And one case in 2018 included several emails from concerned neighbors about the windows on the second story. Can you speak to the relevance to this design? Are they the same windows on the same facade that are of concern, or have we heard from neighbors, current neighbors?
Chair, Member Beachside, we have not heard any concerns from community members, whether it be the neighboring properties or other members. So as at this point, there have been no concerns raised on that subject elevation.
All right, and then can you just tell us what happened in 2018 when the neighbors were objecting? Was that approved, or was the request approved, or?
Let me do some research just to be sure, and I'll get back with you.
Thank you.
Any other clarification questions for Heather? None. Will the applicant please come forward? Oh, the applicant is not here. Unless the applicant is on Zoom.
I don't see the applicant on Zoom either. Kevin Segura is the only other. And I spoke with the owner this afternoon, so that's puzzling.
Well, with that being said, no applicant here. This case has to be postponed. Do I hear a motion for postponement?
Each I will move to postpone case 2023-006566 HDRB at 117 V Hill Lane due to the applicant's absence from the hearing.
Aguilar Medrano seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
Member Beachside.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. We're going to get John back in here. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to discussion items.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, you were going to do the findings of fact.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, we do have findings of fact and conclusions of law that were postponed to this portion of the meeting. And I think that we have a clarification, or that we finally clarify in reference to, I believe it was in case 57 Old Santa Fe Trail.
Chair.
Is that clarified, Member Benvenue, to your satisfaction? And Attorney Rubalid?
I was hoping that the red line version of the findings of fact was that I had sent to Attorney Rubeline and Ms. Lamboy had been found so that it could just be read into the record.
I did. Okay. Member Bienvenue, I did find the red line version. The last sentence in the background section, and since this is bit of an extensive background section falls on page 2. Immediately before the findings of fact, as I wrote it, reads, the staff recommended approval of the application and recommended findings that the applicants have conclusively demonstrated the applicable exception criteria. Santa Fe City Code Section 14-8.10H, special sign regulations in the H districts. Member Bienvenue asked for the following edit, which I have no objection to. The staff did not find that the proposed sign is required to prevent a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare, but otherwise recommended approval of the application and recommended findings that the applicants conclusively demonstrated the other applicable exception criteria. Santa Fe City Code Section 14-810H, special sign regulations, the H districts.
Does that cover what
Yes.
indicated? And Heather, yes.
Chair Rios, the only concern I have is in that hearing, we discussed about an injury to the public welfare, and I mentioned that in my presentation. So the criterion is a hardship to the applicant or injury to the public welfare. So while it might not be a hardship, it does not represent an injury to the public welfare. So that is why staff ultimately found that the proposed request complied with the dimension, the height and dimension restrictions, and permitted for the and supported the exception that was requested.
Thank you for the clarification. So if with this discussion being had, is there a motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of all?
Well, I think we have a disagreement, so it may be difficult to do so, but I'll state my reasoning. I literally imported the language of the staff report into the findings, and the staff report, if someone can pull it up, specifically said staff does not find that the application as submitted is required to prevent a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare. That's what the staff report says. And so I just simply incorporated in that literally means that exception criteria staff does not find has been met. There was no disjunction in the staff report between one and the other.
Heather, do you have a response in reference to this?
Yes, I'm due, but I'm pulling up my staff report. Just one moment. So ultimately, staff recommended approval on the application on the criterion where the applicant response is, as well as the staff response of regarding a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare. The staff does not find that the proposed sign is required to prevent a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare. And so traditionally, an injury to the public welfare is representing something as offering a threat to the health, the public safety, and the welfare. And since it is an or type of situation, both criteria don't need to be complied with. So because staff found and recommended approval for the exception, staff found that criterion was met.
Well, that's just literally not what the staff report says. The
I'll
staff
defer to
report
the staff.
literally says staff does not find it's required to prevent a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare. And that's the criterion.
There definitely is a conflict here. I mean, and I seem to remember the version that Member Benvenu is indicating in reference to this case, that it indicated, that staff indicated that that they had not met that criterion.
And
Because-
if I, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Interrupt.
Right. So in reference to the hardship. Member Benvenu.
Well, I was just going to also add that the interpretation that was just given is not actually consistent with the exception criteria, because staff just indicated that it found that it would not cause an injury to the public welfare, but that's not one of the criteria. There's we don't decide whether it would cause an injury to the public welfare. What we decide is whether the exception is required to prevent an injury to the public welfare. Those are two completely different standards.
The language is are required to prevent a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare.
Exactly. It's not whether or not it causes an injury to the public welfare. It's whether it's required to prevent an injury to the public welfare. And the burden is on the applicant to establish that.
So what do we do here?
My belief is that Member Bienvenu's proposed edit accurately cites what's in the staff report. But I don't understand why you don't want that recited. Why don't we want that recited in the background? I don't know that it has to be in there, but I think to the extent that board wants it in there, unless the board doesn't agree with Member Bienvenu, and we can have a discussion about that, but it accurately recites the staff report. I think the background section is kind of not really binding on anything. You know, the background section recites the history of the application.
I think it's extremely important because if an appeal is taken on any of our cases, one of the questions that is always asked by the governing body of staff is, what was your recommendation? It is true that everyone knows that is not binding and it's not a formal finding, and that the board ultimately makes its own decision, but it does carry weight. And right now, this finding has an inaccurate statement that says staff found that all exception criteria were met. That's not correct because the staff report did not say that. And the explanation that's been given is not literally, but is an incorrect interpretation of the exception criteria. Again, we don't ask whether or not it will cause an injury to the public welfare. We ask whether it's necessary to prevent an injury to public welfare. And the findings need to reflect reality and what we decide and what was recommended. And hopefully, when this is presented, if it is on appeal to the governing body, this is adequately explained.
Well, yes, Heather.
Rios, with reference to that, the staff report may be poorly written. I will grant that. But ultimately, staff recommended approval. And so based on, as the report was written, the focus was on preventing an injury to the public welfare. And it still does prevent an injury to the public welfare in that, and it will when they apply for a permit. So there's no general injury to the public welfare, whereas the hardship is something that's the burden of proof on the applicant. But ultimately, staff did recommend approval for the project.
I also note that the staff's narrative, that following what the staff wrote, staff does not find the proposed sign is required to prevent a hardship to the applicant or an injury to the public welfare. Seems to describe why it's not an injury to the public welfare. Plaza only has one other sign on the wall, which is First National Bank. The sign is smaller than the existing sign. No, it's. I don't know.
This,
Guess I'd have
this
to-
is what I'm going to suggest. That the maker of the motion, Mr. Benvenue, I would suggest that he make the motion to accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law and indicate the changes in reference to 57 Old Santa Fe Trail. And let's see if somebody seconds the motion and see where it goes from there.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the single findings of fact and conclusions of law for 57 Old Santa Fe Trail, and I don't have the case number in front of me, I move that the proposed findings be amended as indicated, as read by Attorney Rubelit into the record pursuant to my earlier proposal.
Is there a second to this motion?
Aguilar Medrano will second.
And is there anything further to add? If there's nothing further to add, we'll take a roll call.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
Member Beachside.
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
You and Member Benvenue, were you adopting the rest of the findings and conclusions?
I just wanted to break it into two pieces for clarity, but yes, I would now move that all of the other proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law in the packet be approved as submitted.
Aguilar Medrano will second.
Anything further to add to this? Anything further? Roll call vote, please.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley,
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you very much. And I think for discussion item.
Chair Rios, if I could just advise the board of one other matter regarding the findings of fact and conclusions of law. And that is that there was a proposed amendment to a finding of fact, conclusions of law that was at 1564 Canyon Road. And Member Bienvenue, I had no objection to your a slight modification to that. But I didn't get it on the agenda for tonight, so it will be on the agenda for April 25th.
Just for my own sake, I can't remember, but wasn't that one that was that the revisions were proposed at the hearing and there was a vote to approve them?
I believe that is.
So it might have already been approved just in the manner that we just approved.
Okay, I'd still like
57.
Okay, let me read that into the record. Okay. So if I could have just a moment.
I'm just asking, but I think those were the findings that you're referring to. And if I can just add, this is why I think we need to go back to the old system where these findings of fact and conclusions of law are submitted to the to the board at least 3 days before they're put in the packet. So there's an opportunity to have this back and forth. It's very difficult to have these discussions at this point in time at the hearing when they've already been submitted in the packet.
And Member Bienvenue, I believe we are trying to.
I have not seen any of the ones that we saw today, other than 57 Old Santa Fe Trail, despite multiple requests.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to try to accomplish that.
Thank you for that. I'll try to get the findings and conclusions with plenty of time so board members have a chance to really study them.
The revision Member Bienvenue requested with respect to 1564 Canyon Road was to add the following to the findings of fact. The board notes that the ground mounted solar array is currently screened from public view by the existing vegetation. And the problem I have though, Chair Rios and Member Bienvenu, is because those were not on this agenda at all. I believe the public is entitled to some notice that those are up for a vote, because the appeal deadline starts running when the board approves a finding of fact and conclusions of law. If it's not on the agenda, I don't think we have adequate public notice. So I think this has to be placed on the agenda for April 25th.
I'm perfectly fine with whatever your legal view is. I just do think that it was on the agenda and we received them in the packet. And we had a discussion at the hearing, but I could be wrong and completely defer to your judgment.
I would prefer to play it safe and place them on the agenda again for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else under discussion items? Heather, Ramon, or anyone?
Yes, Chair Rios, one of the things I like to do is send the drafts to Frank before sending findings of fact even to members of the board. And so I will make sure that our staff, including me, gets those to Frank earlier so he has the opportunity and the time to process it so we can get it to you in advance of the packet. So in the recent past, I've been waiting for Frank's review. He's been covering for municipal court and doing a lot of things, and we're all busy, and I need to acknowledge that and give him more time. So I will be sure that we get those findings to him sooner so that we can have, I can be sure that he's okay with those that are sent.
Thank you for those efforts. Thank you.
Just
Yes.
I completely agree with that. And again, going back to past practice, they always came to the board from the city attorney.
Thank you. Anything else under discussion items? If not, I'll move on to matters from the board. I do have something in reference to matters from the board. We have, do you happen to know what the status is in reference to member Flynn Larson? She has been absent for quite a while, and I'm wondering what is going on with that. Is that a vacancy? Is that what's going on?
Rios, a while back, she asked to step down in order to complete her master's thesis, but said that she would be available after she was done with her master's thesis. At that time, it was determined by Carly with me as well as Flynn that since she was going to be available in May, that would be something that it takes a while to get somebody appointed to the H board. And we thought that might be prudent, but given our recent quorum concerns and issues, I'm looking for additional input, and board member Guida has already referenced or provided me with some names. And so I will nominate them and accept Ms. Larson's withdrawal.
Oh, okay, so I am understanding that member Larson has withdrawn her name from being on the board.
Rios, she originally said that she would like to resign so that she could complete her
Right.
thesis. But
Wanted to come back in May. Is that what I understood?
she
you to
mentioned that
say?
she would be available in May after she finished her thesis. And at that time, Carly and I decided to, wait in terms of nominating somebody else in the hopes that she could come back and there wouldn't be any issues, but there have been issues with quorum.
So the path that is being taken now is that we are looking for a historian on the board. Is that correct?
Rios said is correct. Historian is a little bit more challenging, but we hope to find one.
So if other board members have suggestions, they should submit them to you.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. Anything else?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Was I recognized? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun on that.
I'm looking right at.
Hello. Okay, thank you. So just for clarification, I mean, how does this process work? I mean, has this been like advertised? You said that one of our members has submitted nominations. I thought we all thought that it wasn't even an open position at this point in time. So I don't think anyone's been actually actively.
Clarify it.
Right. So shouldn't there be some time frame where solicitations are sent out for people to apply, and then they're all considered at the same time? This is truly an open question. I just don't know.
So on the city's website, and anybody can submit applications for boards and commissions. And so it's like a rolling advertisement. And so in addition to recommendations, there's also, we draw from those applications as well. So, but you know, when it comes to a historian, that is a bit more challenging. And so I seek extra assistance with that. So we do have that sort of list of eligibles on the website that doesn't include an official historian. Does not include historian.
Yeah, I guess I'm still just wondering, like, the timing and so forth. It seems like now that we've been informed that this position needs to be filled, as opposed to just leaving it for Member Larson to return to, should there be some time period while applications are being submitted before any further action is taken? In your opinion, I guess I'm just asking what your opinion is based on your understanding of how the process works.
So for nominations to boards and commissions, there's no specific timeline or cutoff. We just receive applications on a rolling basis. And so the process, the mayor has to endorse those nominations that are made. And so when there's a need, the staff looks to see if there's somebody on the list that has already applied. If there's not, for instance, with the planning commission, we're having struggles filling a position that represents theirs is by council district. And so you have to be in a council district in order to be that board member, you know, for that district. And so on that sort of list, there was nobody from District 4, for instance. And so we had to go out and ask for, you know, additional assistance from those within our network that we know already. So this is a similar situation. Historian is harder to come by. I don't know that any decision has been made other than last meeting. There was concern expressed by Ms. Larson's absence, and it may be that staff did not act in the best manner. But on the other hand, it was, you know, sort of a leave of absence, and she could continue her term, and we wouldn't have to renominate somebody.
Sure. I guess I would just propose that now that it's public and the board has been informed this position needs to be filled, that there be at least a few weeks for submissions to be received before anything further is done.
And do we get to see the ones that have been recommended?
Arios is typically staff that makes a recommendation to the mayor.
No, but do we get to see what Member Guida has recommended?
Certainly, Member Guida recommended Denise Ip, and she's been involved in lots of different aspects of construction and meets the qualifications for historian in her resume. So,
and in reference to the qualifications, are there definite specifics?
it references a historian. I would have to double check the code specifically, but there are no specific qualifications. Other than that, we've typically followed the guidance of the Archaeological Review Committee and the historian that is associated with what's required for ARC and to apply for historic districts review.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Anything else to discuss? If not, our next meeting will be Tuesday, April the 25th. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Aguilar
To
Medrano.
adjourn.
Oh.
You go.
Aguilar Medrano, so moves.
Bienvenido seconds.
And roll call vote.
Member Aguilar Medrano,
Yes.
Member Berkeley.
Yes.
Member Beachside,
Yes.
Member Bienvenue.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.